Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with part 2 of the June 2018 monthly card kit from Hero Arts. Still working with those layered stamps, the inks that they provided, the spray, although we're not going to see the spray in this one, and that beautiful embossing powder. So let's get started with card 6. So you can see I've chosen a piece of vellum, and I used my Lawn Fawn Stitch rectangle die to cut that out. And I just had to trim the edge. I didn't have it set right in my die cutting machine. I have here a piece of white cardstock, and I'm using 5 colors of the Distress Oxides. I also chose the little beach ball from the stamp set. So I'm starting out with picked raspberry, and I'm just stamping a few. I'm going to clean it off, and I'm using my Lawn Fawn chamois. And I'm going in now with abandoned coral and then just touching the tip of it into the pink raspberry. So as we continue to stamp up this card panel, it's going to look like it's variegated, so to speak, with all of these colors. Now, all the colors that I chose were picked raspberry, abandoned coral, spice marmalade, the peeled paint, and the peacock feathers. I had to think about those colors there, but as you can see, I'm starting to memorize them. So you can see they're overlapping, and I get a little heavier with the stamping as we get to, in this case, the top of the card. Now I'm actually going to flip this over, so the blue and the green is going to be towards the bottom of the card base. So it's almost like we're throwing up the beach balls. Yeah, well, okay. That's what it turned into. So I'm going to use my heat gun real quick just to heat set these. Remember, your oxides are both pigment and dye. So because of the pigment element, they do take a little bit longer to dry. I'm going to use that same Lawn Fawn Stitch rectangle die, and I'm going to cut this panel out as well. So the two panels are the exact same size. And I keep verifying that. So I want to place my vellum on top because I'm going to stamp my sentiment onto the vellum. So I just wanted to see where was it going to look good. And I pulled out my Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp that right in this section here. I did prep this with my anti-static tool, and I do have both. When I can find one, that's the one that I use. That's how that works. I chose my Nuvo Jet Black embossing powder, and I just heat set that, and I'm just lightly and gently waving the piece of vellum so that it can cool down. I grabbed my art glitter glue, and I'm putting a dot of glue in the center of each of these beach balls, so it's all over. And that's how I'm going to adhere the piece of vellum onto my design panel. Now, it was a little touchy there. I thought I went right through the glue. I did not. Yeah, I keep throwing things. I'm not quite sure what's going on. So I am going to use some acrylic blocks to put some weight on this so that the glue does dry. Now, the glue is going to react with the Distress Oxide. Again, the glue has water in it, and this dye, these pigments, are water reactive. And that's okay, because we are going to cover those up. I used my tape runner to adhere this down onto my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base. I pulled out my Desiree iridescent sequins. If you've seen my previous videos, you know these are my go-to. This is one of my staples that must be with me at all times. And I'm just placing them around. I'm using my wax pencil. It's actually used for nail art. I think they work perfectly for applying sequins. So now we have all kinds of sparkle on this card. And of course the sentiment said, "Greetings from my happy place." So for my next card, I used my wonky stitch die from My Favorite Things to cut out this panel, and I chose the antique linen and vintage photo, and you can use any of those browns. You could use gathered twigs, just all kinds of different browns. to make this. And I'm just applying using my finger sponge daubers with the antique linen. Just placing that all over. So it's almost like I want a splot or a splatter. Splatter combined. Yeah. And now I'm going to go in with my vintage photo. And I'm dabbing it. It looks like it's got the measles going on here. But when I come back in with the antique linen on top of that, because they still are wet, I'm able to just move that ink around and make it look dirty, like sand. And that's what I'm going for here. But I don't want to have the typical sandy beach. This card creates that absolutely beautiful. But let's not make 10 versions of it, shall we? So, kind of pulling in the concept of sand and beach, here's just another version of that. I wanted to extend, after I took the sentiment, life is better with sandy feet, and I used one of my Lawn Fawn Everyday Banner sentiment dies to cut that out. I just wanted this spot or splotter to come out a little further underneath, because there's something that I'm going to be adding to the one side of that. I chose my dark chocolate Gina K ink, and I'm stamping the beach chair, the Adirondack. I originally tried it with my vintage photo, the Distress Oxide. I just didn't like how it looked. It looks cool. I mean, I like it, but it's not what I was going for with this. I think it was too close for the color. I wanted something very bold. And you can see I'm going to set that chair right on the edge of that sentiment. One of the other things that really grabbed me when it came to this, and it's something very strange, one was the clouds. I loved the clouds in this stamp set. But the second thing that I always wanted to use and grab for were the feet, because I thought these feet were absolutely adorable. I don't know why. Could you imagine a background with just the feet all over the place? That would have been so cool. I did not do that, so don't look for that. But there's an idea if you have this kit. Just do the background with the feet and the beach ball. It would create a great background. So I used the sand embossing powder that came with the kit. I have those set. I'm going around the edge now with my mini blender and vintage photo ink, not oxide, but the regular ink. You can see this one is very much loved. And I also went around the sentiment as well, just so that it would stand out, have like a frame going around it. I did not use it for the Adirondack chair. I'm going to prop that up with some double-sided foam squares, and I'm going to set that in place. And then I'm going to use my liquid glue to adhere my chair onto this strip. And I didn't have to worry about adding any foam to the back of that, because it pretty much straddled this perfectly. I'm not worried about that little edge coming off there. It should be fine. So that's our panel. I'm going to use my tape runner so that I can adhere this onto my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base. And the colors that I chose for all of these cards was white. I usually like a white base. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my colors too. But white is usually the go-to, because I'm usually inking my backgrounds, or watercoloring my backgrounds, or doing something with that. I pulled out my Spectrum Noir and just went over the Adirondack chair just to give it some sparkle. Make sure you clean off the tip, because it could pick up the ink. For this card, I pulled out my Mermaid Lagoon. Can you tell I like the Distress Oxides? That they are my favorite. And I'm also using one of my Nuvo blenders. I use these, as you get more ink on these and use them more, they will get softer and you'll get a smoother blend. But I grab these when I'm doing something like this, where I just want to get color down onto the cardstock, and I could either soak it with water or I'm going to go over it with stamping. So I always do grab those. Somebody did mention before, and I am going to check this out. I just haven't gotten there yet. You know, the dollar store sells those blenders as well. They're makeup blenders. So I'm curious if they would do the same thing as well. Never know. We'll find out. We'll see it in a video. So I pulled out one of the layers of the ocean, and I'm using the inks that came in the kit. And you can see when I stamped it the first time, I used the entire stamp. The next time, I'm only using the bottom portion. I'm only inking that portion because I don't want that solid. I only wanted that at the top. I didn't want to put a sand base to this. I wanted all of the ocean. So I'm only using that second layer, and now I'm coming in with the final layer. And again, since I started at the bottom, I'm only inking the bottom portion. I don't want that solid strip. Now I'm going in with that solid strip so that it's further to the back. So just by inking a section of your stamp, you can stretch these out. You don't have to put a beach. You don't have to put it low on the card. So you could fill this entire card up with that scenery. I chose to go up maybe a third or just over a third of this card. And it's okay that I have that blue coming up above it. It's almost like spray, like it's moving around. I grabbed one of my pencils. I'm old-fashioned. I like the wood pencils. I do have mechanical pencils, but you know what? A wood pencil's just fine. And I drew like a half circle almost, like a section of it. While that's in place, or after that's drawn, I grabbed the palm tree. So I'm going to stamp that twice, but I want the second one to be higher than the first, which is okay. I'm going to clean this stamp off really well first. It looks like I'm violent. I'm not. It's just, going really quick here. But I want to make sure it's clear because I don't want to stamp anywhere else. But I'm going to extend the trunk now. It's not going to look perfect, but that's okay. You can come in with a black marker. I don't suggest an alcohol marker because it could bleed, because alcohol will move through the paper fibers. So I grabbed one of my Faber-Castell pit markers. I love those markers. They are my favorite. Permanent. I then grabbed the birds, and I'm using my VersaFine ink. I find that gives me a good solid coverage of black when it comes to these silhouette stamps. And I grabbed the sentiment, "See you soon." So I thought that was really cute, and I've put that up in the upper right-hand corner. Now I'm going to douse this panel with the powder from my anti-static tool. And then I'm also going to hit it below. But I grabbed my Emboss It pen from Ranger, and I'm going to color in that circle that I drew. So this is going to become like a, my own little island out there. Just peace, quiet, all those fun things. You can come up with so many different words. I'm using now the sand embossing powder. I really loved this embossing powder. I loved the effect. I grabbed just one of my mop brushes that I have sitting off to the side, and I'm just cleaning off. I never have any luck. The embossing powder still sticks where it's not supposed to. So I always have those brushes along the side, and that's the only thing that I use them for. And they're nothing fancy. They're very inexpensive at my local craft store. I heat set that, and it's okay that I have that white line going there. It's like a highlight line that's going on my little mound of an island there. Grabbed my tape runner, and I'm going to adhere this to my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base. And then I'm going to grab my Jewel Nouveau drops, and this is in Sea Breeze. And I'm going to put a line of this at where the ocean meets the background. And I did leave my background white. I didn't want to put a night sky in. I mean, you could have. It would have looked beautiful if you did like a sunset in the background. I thought of that afterwards. But I do like the white. White sometimes makes things pop, makes them stand out more. I was always, I was at a job for a long time, and they said, white is nice. White is good. So it's kind of ingrained into my head. So I hope you enjoyed that card. Let's move on to the next. So I have my card panel here, and I used my wonky stitch rectangle for my favorite things. And I'm first stamping my sentiment, enjoy the beach life. And I'm just going to stamp that kind of in the center. It's actually off to the left a little bit, which is what I was looking for. And I grabbed the gray ink from the kit. I also grabbed the starfish. They have 2 sizes, and the seashell. So with the larger starfish, I'm going to do first generation stamping. So ink pad right onto the paper. For the smaller starfish, you can see I'm playing around with this. So I'm going into the ink pad, I'm lightly stamping off, and then I'm stamping onto my panel. It's not a perfect impression, and I didn't want that. I want just the illusion of it, so it's faint. If you've seen some of my previous videos, I love the look of black and white, and then having pops of color. I kind of did it with one of my first hero art kits I think I showed on my channel, the pumpkins. I for some reason, I gravitate to that. And there are things that as we create, we do gravitate to. So when it comes to this, the seashell, I have to slow down when I say that, I'm doing a double stamping. So I want 2 layers of the gray. So I've actually created 3 different tones of that gray ink. Now the shell, we're just going to say shell, does dry back a little bit, but you can see the different levels. And here I'm using my wonky stitch die. I usually already cut those. I grabbed those adorable stickers that came in the card kit. They're matte. That's what I love about them. And they're solid. You can hear me tapping on it. I don't know if you can hear that. But they're really adorable. So I'm just going through, choosing a different color, a different shell, a different starfish, and I'm just setting them around, coming up on the right hand side. So it's not a wreath, but it's like a trail of the shells and the starfish that's coming up around our sentiment, because I do enjoy the beach, but I am more of a woods of the mountains as well. I mean, I like both. Usually if I'm on a beach, I sleep, which is awesome. But I do like, the woods, the mountains, cabin type scenery for vacation. So that was card number 9. Card number 10, I pulled out my penny black antique frame die. And I'm also grabbing, I believe this is my Mermaid Lagoon again. Yes. Grabbing that Nuvo blender sponge, and I'm just going along the bottom. Again, I'm not caring if it's a smooth blend, but I do see as I work with these and get more ink on them, they do put a smoother blend down, but I did want to daub it to get some of those dimensions and textures in there. Now, what is great with those Nuvo blenders is you can wash them. So even though they'll stain, but if you wash them out, you can reuse them even for a different color. So keep that in mind as well. So I placed my ocean down. I stamped my little sailboat in my VersaFine black. And again, I am dousing. I should have just opened the container and poured the powder on. It's just, it's what we'll do. I'm pulling out my VersaFine ink, and I'm going to use that last layer, the darkest one, or the one that you would use for the darkest color. And I'm just using the VersaFine, but same thing. I'm using the whole stamp for the top to get that line, and then I'm just using the bottom of it for the lower parts. I pulled out my silver embossing powder, and I covered that, and I'm going to heat set that. Now, I went a little bit crooked with that line, but again, I'm okay with that. We can call that some sea spray. We can call that a wave coming in. Again, it's okay with me. I'm good with that. Now, there is another happy accident. It's not that you can see it, but even though I used all that powder on the sailboat, I still had some of the embossing powder to go up it. So it's almost like it's you know, moving through the ocean. So again, happy accidents are good things. I'm using the soft sky ink and the solid image of the clouds. Now, the clouds came with 2 layers. So you have your main, which is what I used here, and then it had the second layer. It didn't come with 3. For the second layer, I'm using my VersaFine. Again, doused it with my anti-static. And now I'm just going over each of the clouds. The kit actually came with 3 different clouds, and I did use them all. And again, I'm coming over this with my silver embossing powder. This one was actually inspired from the first card I made in part 1 with Sympathy. When I put the gray on it, I really liked it. So I was really curious of what this would look like with the silver. And I think it's different. It's unique. But I did like the effect that I did get. I grabbed the gray ink and I grabbed the Sentiment with Sympathy. And what's nice is that gray does dry back, so it's a very faint with Sympathy. I'm going around the edge with the ink that was left over in my blending sponge, and I just went around the edge, again using my tape runner. I'm going directly onto my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base, which is what I did with all the cards. I realized I didn't use any fun foam or double-sided tape or anything like that. Okay, everyone, here are the close-ups of the cards that we made for part 2 of my 10 card 1 kit series for the My Monthly Hero Arts June 2018 card kit. That's a tongue twister. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you like the fact that I kind of went off a little bit different instead of doing the normal beach scenes. So kind of looked at different aspects of the kit, tried to pull that out. No, I didn't use all of it. I didn't use the mermaid. I'm really not a mermaid person. So I try to pull things that inspire me. Maybe there's something here that inspires you, but maybe in a different way. And I hope that does happen. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that button. You don't want to miss any more videos that are going to come out off this channel. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Please know I do try to answer every comment and question that is listed below each video. And if I should miss it, please let me know. Ask it again. I will make sure I get back to you. All the products that I used outside of the kit will be listed down below, but if you've seen my previous videos, you know I always forget something. So, again, let me know and I will make sure you get that link as well. I hope everyone is having a great weekend. We are having some beautiful weather for once, which is awesome. But please, always remember, be creative.